What is the danger, you think, in the months ahead, given the first issue, which is the seemingly relentless drawdown of weapons from the US and other NATO countries, as this war continues to draw down on more and more stockpiles and equipment?
Yeah, Paula, that's one of the big issues that's confronting the entire Western alliance because the defense industrial base, as it's known, of all these countries, the NATO countries in Europe, as well as the United States and Canada, it's really not built for this kind of a war. And that very fact has made it really difficult for the West to resupply Ukraine. Ukraine is using weapons at a very high rate. It's using ammunition, of course, as part of this. And then the other thing that we're confronted with is the barrels of the various artillery pieces are overheating because of overuse. So that's a major issue for the Ukrainians and for the West, especially if the West wants to continue to help the Ukrainians and help the Ukrainians stop the Russians.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke to CNN's Christiane Amanpour about the option, we were just talking about it, right, of possibly resuscitating Soviet-era weapons systems. I never thought I would hear this after hearing for more than 3 decades that the West wanted these Eastern European countries to modernize their military. But I want you to listen to him now, and we'll talk on the back end.
We're looking at every option to make sure that, again, they get what they need and what can be most effective for them. Some of that does go to Soviet-era systems that they've had in their inventory for decades, and, for example, making sure that the ammunition is there for those systems.
So, Colonel, does this strike you as a good strategic option or more of a sign of desperation? There has been a study, the most recent from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and found that it would take years to replenish these stocks, given that, as you say, the industrial military complex is designed for peace. I mean, does it strike you as desperate or a creative idea?
Well, it's somewhat creative in the sense that the Ukrainians, of course, have had Soviet-era weapon systems ever since they gained or regained their independence in 1991. So they're used to this. They've been trained on this. And even if they've had a break in service between their initial military service and their call up for this war, they're still familiar with these weapon systems. So in that sense, it makes sense to do that. But on the other hand, these systems are old. They are not as effective as their Western counterparts, especially the modern Western counterparts. And the Ukrainians would be better served if they could receive the Western systems and they could be trained on them. So that's a big and, but that is one of the key things that would need to happen in this case. So I think that it requires a lot of creative solutions, using old Soviet equipment, but also ramping up the training for modern Western equipment to be used by the Ukrainians themselves.
Right. I see like a two-track approach that you're talking about. I'm going to lean on your expertise here because we all remember at the start of this war that Ukraine asked for that no-fly zone that they didn't get. Now, you say it's now highly likely that these new air defense systems that they get could potentially have a truly integrated air and missile defense system in place for Ukraine. Do you think, though, that it will come soon enough, given everything you've seen on the battlefield?
Yeah, that's my biggest concern, Paula, actually, that they won't come soon enough. So this requires not only the logistical piece to move forward, but also the training piece to move forward. And, we do understand that the U.S. is working in conjunction with the Ukrainians and with NATO partners, especially Germany, to train a much greater volume of Ukrainians on Western systems. So if that happens, it can be done, but it also requires the Ukrainians to leave their country and leave their fighting posts in order to come in, get some training, and then come back. So it's a bit of a tough haul, and it's certainly very concerning. And basically, the clock is running out in multiple directions, and that's going to be a really big problem for the West, for the Ukrainians, and really for the world.